Guys, so today we're actually going to talk about InDesign. We're getting introduced into this particular program. Now, up until now, we've used Illustrator, which we know we can use for like corporate logos and any kind of graphics that are scalable. And then you got Photoshop, which is really good for photo retouching. All right, but it's not necessarily, or either one is not necessarily that great at actually working with multiple page documents. As I stated before, it's like what we had was if you had a situation where a client calls you up and says, "Hey, I want a 120 page catalog," and then you start working on it, and you're used to Photoshop as that's your favorite program. You start creating 120 some files or even artboards in Photoshop, and over time, your computer might start going really slow if it doesn't crash. All right. So Photoshop is not a great program to actually do a 120 page catalog, nor is Illustrator. But the one program that is good at it is Adobe InDesign. It is primarily built as a program to create these multiple page documents. So we're going to talk about that today, and what you may see up on my screen is Adobe InDesign. So like when you open up, you'll have this kind of like screen. Um, Basically, what you're seeing here is kind of like maybe a little different from what you may see, but we're going to talk about this a little bit at a time. So we're going to go up to here where it says Create New. You can also go up to File, New, Document, and we'll create a new document. And what I have here is my presets as far as what comes installed within Adobe InDesign. All right, so as we're going through this, I just want to kind of like point out some things here. All right, there are a number of different tabs. Each one represents different type of media, I should say. So like print will deal with print material, or web might deal with web material, and as far as mobile goes. We're going to go to print because that's primarily we're going to use InDesign for most of the things that we create. All right, so we'll go to print. And from print, we can choose things like letter or legal size or tabloid or letter half. Do you have to choose any of these? No, you don't. Because off to your right, you're going to see that there is a width and there is a height. Right now, it's kind of like defined as 51p0. All right, what that actually stands for is a unit of measurement called picas. All right, picas is what we used to use as a graphic designer tool form of measurement. But I usually don't like to use picas instead because my clients talk in inches. All right, so what I usually do is I change my units to inches so I can kind of like see what I am actually creating. So you got width and you have height. You also have orientation, which is vertical or portrait, or horizontal, which is also called landscape. All right, for this particular one, we're going to use the portrait element. Then there's the pages. How many pages does it have? Now, in most cases, what you're going to have for any project that's dealing with multiple page documents, if it is printed, it'll always be in a multiple of 4. So like if you have like a booklet, a catalog or something like that, you will always have a multiple of 4. Because if you take an 11 by 17 sheet and divide it in half, you're going to have 4 8.5 by 11 panels on that 11 by 17. That's why it's always labeled as basically 4 pages, or any multiple of 4 pages. So for this one, I'm actually going to use 8. I'm going to do 8 pages for this one. And there's a checkbox called facing pages. All right, what facing pages refers to is that if you open a book, and you see both pages, what are both of those pages doing? They're typically facing each other when they're closed. So that's what we're referring to as far as facing pages go. All right, columns refer to like the columns of a like a newspaper, really good example because what it deals with is the columns. Most newspaper are developed in columns. So they divide their page up into columns so that they know how to run the article, or basically run an ad. The column gutter is that space in between the columns. So we can refer to that as how big of a gap is there between columns. All right. Margins. Margins is a particular unit element on the page which refers to how inset is some of your art elements. Now, we're referring to columns, margins, and we're going to talk about bleed here in a second. But column and margin refers to like a unit, a measurement, a guideline. All right, it is not set in stone like it would be in Microsoft Word, where you set margins and you can begin typing and your wording wouldn't go beyond that. In InDesign, it's only a guide. It does not force you to reroute in that particular on that page. So I'm going to leave it at about a 1/2 inch for the top, bottom, middle, inside, and outside. We're going to go to bleed, which we're dealing with. What is bleed? Well, bleed is when you have a document printed, a multiple page document, and you have a color that goes right to the edge of the paper. All right. More than likely, what had happened is the designer included what's called a bleed, where it's basically you're going beyond the page boundaries in that. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when we get to that. And you always want to go, your design usually either goes beyond the page or it sets in a little bit from the page. It never goes right to the edge. So, because what happens is when they print these thousands and thousands of documents, they have cutters that will go ahead and cut through these thousands and thousands of books, and they will trim them. And they're usually accurate to about 1/8 of an inch. All right. So you want to make sure that you are basically keeping the edge clean of artwork. It's either you go beyond or you keep it out, like inside. So for this one, I'm going to go with the standard of 1/8 inch, which is at 0.125. Check on the check mark here, or the chain link. And then I'm going to skip over slug. Slug is not very used very much anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create. All right, so what we have here is we have this particular document open. And the white represents your actual printed page. The red line around the document refers to the bleed that we're talking about. The purple and pink lines refer to the margins. Now again, these are only guides. They are not going to force you to do anything. So you want to make sure that, okay, gosh. You want to make sure that you're not using them or thinking that the purple and pink is the boundary of the ad. It's not. The white is. All right, so you want to make sure that that's taken account. Now, when we're dealing with multi-page documents, you kind of wonder, well, where's all the other pages? Well, I'm going to zoom out using Control minus, and you can see that there are my 8 pages in what is called designer spreads. All right, what this refers to, basically refers to as page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so we design in that particular order. All right, so we won't be designing too much in there, but I do want to show you some things within InDesign. Now, InDesign is a program that everything is in a box. All right, you put pictures, they come in a box. You put text, they come in a box. Everything that you create within InDesign is in a box. All right, so we have to work with that. But InDesign basically relates closer to Illustrator than it does Photoshop. So we're going to look at our toolboxes over here. And you got the selection tool. You got the direct selection tool, which if you remember from Illustrator, the selection tool selects things as a whole. The white arrow selects things in parts. And we're going to deal with that here in just a moment. All right, so one of the things that's in here that we want to work with is text. InDesign is phenomenal at text. That's why, basically if you're laying out a multiple page document, most of the stuff is going to be in text. That's, again, another strong suit that InDesign has over Illustrator and Photoshop. It deals with text so much better than either one of those programs do. So here we got the text tool, or the type tool. It looks like a little T. I'm going to click that. Now, unlike Illustrator or Photoshop, this does have to work, and you have to put text in the program in a certain way. All right, the first way, or the only way, really, to put in text is you have to click, hold, drag. If I were to just click, you'll notice nothing happens. But if I go ahead and click, hold, drag, you're seeing I'm creating a box. That is referring to what I call a text box. Okay, this is where you put your text that you're going to be putting into the design. So you see a blinking cursor in the upper left corner. From there, what we can do is we can put in text. Now, a lot of times when you're dealing with the design, sometimes clients don't give you the text that needs to be put in here. They kind of want you to actually design it first before they go ahead and give you the text. Which is the same question as which came first, the chicken or the egg. So you're kind of like, it's a lot of times you're forced to design something before you actually have any of our elements to work with. So how do we put in text to kind of like work with? Well, InDesign has that feature too. If you go up to type and all the way to the bottom of the list, you're going to find an option called fill with placeholder text. If you click that, it's going to put in what is called Greek text or dummy text. It's a combination of Latin or whatever else is put in here, but it makes it look like they're words, which is going to give the client a visual appearance of what the design will look like with text in it, even though it's not readable. All right. So this is kind of a good start as to what we're going to work with. Now I'm going to go over a whole section on type, text, and using it in InDesign. There's a whole little lecture I'm having. I'm just giving you the basics for it. But to get you started, in order to change any kind of text here, you have to highlight it first. Click, hold, and drag. And over to the right, you're going to find that there is a character palette. If that is not showing up, it's going to be under Window, Type, Character. All right, that allows you to kind of like bring up the character palette, which I already have up over here on the right. This is where you would choose your font. Any of the fonts that you want are going to be in here. The font style, the size, leading, kerning, tracking, all that stuff, which I'm going to talk more in detail as we go through. So that's where you would change your text. But that's not really what I'm talking about today. Alright, I'm going to go to my black arrow. And when I go to my black arrow, you'll notice that each one of the corners has the white boxes, which you're kind of used to from Illustrator. If I go ahead and I click, hold, drag, make the box smaller, you'll notice that it doesn't make any of the text smaller. It just makes the box smaller. But what it does also add in is what's called like this little red box. That red box is an indicator that there is more text beyond what you're seeing. So like if I want to actually include maybe another text box that I actually will work with, I can go ahead and click this and my cursor will turn into a little cursor with a little preview of what's coming. So at this point, what I can do is I can click, hold, drag to put in more text. Now if I make this smaller and it goes, the red box comes back, I can click again and do that. Now, why is this important? Well, one of the things that, or apparently this helps a lot, is that let's say, for an instance, where you're laying out a magazine, and most magazines, you know that the article spans 3 or 4 pages. So if you lay it all out and the client says, hey, we updated that Word document to put in here, you can go ahead and copy and paste or copy the text from Word, bring it in here and select all, which is Control A or Command A on a Mac, and select all, and then you can paste and it will replace your text, wrapping it just the way you had before throughout those multiple pages. If you did not do that, it would take you forever to just replace the document with the new one. It would take you much longer to do. And then you have to kind of like realign everything and all that kind of stuff. That's not, this is much easier to do that. So like in instances where I know that this is box 1, 2, and 3, if I go to 2, and let's say I go ahead and delete, it'll automatically recognize that this isn't a chain. So the first one and now the second one is there, and it will rewrap to fit that in. It's smart like that. So we're working with text boxes, and again, it makes things a whole lot easier to go ahead and wrap that stuff. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And what I have here, again, is a rectangle tool. You'll notice that if you go down farther, you'll see that there's a pen tool. There's a rectangle tool, there's an ellipse tool, a polygon tool, all that stuff here. All right, rectangle tool, if we go ahead and click hold drag, and you'll notice that the stroke and the fill are back in play. If I go ahead and double click on that, you'll get the color picker, which allows you to kind of like choose your color that you want to fill this with. So you can do that. But one of the things that's really different about InDesign as far as color goes is what is called swatches. If you go up to Window and you go to Color and you go to Swatches, swatches are set up a little bit different from any of the other programs because it keeps track of what colors that you're actually using or you want to put in here. So like some of the things here is like where it says none, it doesn't want any color, I can turn that off. But there's registration and black. These are two particular black colors that are used as separations. So like if I have black here, it's going to print as black. It's not a rich black, it's just black ink. There's also an option called paper. Paper is basically white, but in the graphic design world, there is no such thing as white. In design, you're not going to print white unless you're silk screening and you're printing white on a colored t-shirt. That's the only time you really have to use that. Most of the time, if we're printing something, you are printing it on white paper. So here, it's like what we have as far as paper, it refers to the actual paper, and that is also considered white. So basically, that's what you would use as far as that color goes. All right. To modify colors, like let's say you go ahead and use this red as an example here. I'm going to show you a couple things. I'm going to make this one that same red. All right, so you're going through and you're seeing this and it's like, oh, this is red and this is red. I want to actually make this a darker red. Let's say. So you click on that and then you go here, you can double click on them. And it brings up the swatch options box. Right, so you're thinking, oh, great. It's like, I'm going to go ahead and change that dark to almost black. I like that. It's like really a deep red. Just like so. And then you go ahead and hit OK. And you notice that this one changed too. The reason that one changed is because it's using the same swatch. If you change the swatch, you change every single instance of that color throughout the document. So if you want to make it more of a red, like a dark red, make this one dark red, what you can do is you can click on that and you can go down here where it says New Swatch. You choose New Swatch, double click that, then make this one a deep red, hit OK, and now that one will be a deep red, and this one will not change because it is using a different swatch. Okay. All right. So you can create as many text boxes as you want in the document. So we're doing that. Now, what we're going to talk about is this next exercise, which you're going to see here. Hopefully you guys can see this. It's exercise 7, which is unity on the grid. All right, what I want you to do is you're going to create 10 pages, 8.5 by 11, and I want you to actually develop like 10 different compositions with the title Unity on the Grid, using whatever fonts you want, are elements and text. That's, filler text. So that's really what you're going to be working on as far as that goes. So I'm going to kind of like start this. I'm going to go New Document. Go to Inches. Print, I'll use letter. And I'm going to make turn facing pages off. Make pages 10. Hit create. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a title on the grid. And I'm going to change its font to something else. Maybe Luna, which is a font I have. Create another text box. And I'm going to go up to Type, Fill with Placeholder Text. I'm going to select All. I'm going to choose a different font. I'm going to go with, let's say this one looks good. And you can play around with the text elements here. But one of the things you want to look for in this project is I want you to kind of like pay attention to what is being lined up. The reason it's called Unity on the Grid is because when in design, you want to go ahead and line things up as much as possible. To the eye, to the normal eye, what it does is it kind of like gives you some kind of order. We all like order in some way or another. It's pleasing to the eye. So when we have things lined up on one side, you're going to line it up against the color box as well as the O and on. Or you can do it other ways. You can go to U on the Unity. You can also go to, let's say, Grid, let's say, and then maybe you do it that way and have that lined up. Maybe you have this turned in such a way, and the text is lined up with D there, and then you line this up as well. Maybe you fill this part here. Maybe you turn this here, make this paper, bring this up, object, arrange, bring the front, you line this up with the blue, right? There's all kinds of options that you can do. I want you to explore different ways of lining things up in a document. So you're going to do 10 different compositions this way, using that and using filler placeholder text. You can do any designs you want, but you're going to do 10 of them. All right. And to export out as a PDF, you go to File, Export, and then wherever you want to save it, go to Desktop, choose PDF or Adobe PDF Print, save, and I would just use a default. Whatever comes up default for you is totally fine. Export, just ignore the overset text thing if you get that. And then you'll get your 10 compositions, and that's what you're going to send to me. All right, guys. So that's enough for InDesign. That's a little bit of an intro. I'll be exploring more of those in the next video. All right, see ya.